The impossible discovery Commander Zix-9 stood at the command center of the Vorthok Empire's most advanced dreadnought. The stellar dominance, his 6 arms worked simultaneously across multiple control interfaces, while his compound eyes monitored 17 different tactical displays. The ship stretched over 3 kilometers in length, bristling with quantum disruptor cannons and protected by adaptive energy shields that could withstand the heat of a dying star. The Vorthok Dominion had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 800 years. Their technology was perfection incarnate, every system refined through centuries of scientific advancement. Their weapons could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. Their shields operated on principles that most species couldn't even comprehend. No civilization had ever successfully resisted their expansion. Today should have been routine. Intelligence reports indicated a small human cargo vessel had strayed into contested space near the Kepler 442 system. Humans were a relatively new species to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Their technology was primitive by Vorthok standards, cobbled together from basic materials and outdated principles. Contact. Bearing Mark 774, announced Navigation Officer Krill 15, her voice carrying the mechanical precision that all Vorthok military personnel were trained to maintain. Vessel appears to be of human origin. Configuration unknown. Zix-9 activated the primary viewing screen. What appeared before them defied every expectation he had formed about human engineering. The ship looked like it had been built in someone's backyard using spare parts from a dozen different technologies. Patches of mismatched hull plating covered what appeared to be a basic cylindrical frame. Strange antennas and sensor arrays jutted out at odd angles, connected by cables that seemed to have been strung together as an afterthought. Scan configuration and armament, Zix-9 ordered, his primary arms adjusting the tactical display, while his secondary arms prepared weapon targeting systems. Science. Officer Vex 7 worked at his station for several moments, his specialized sensors probing every aspect of the human vessel. Sir, readings are ... Unusual. The ship appears to be constructed from standard durasteel plating, approximately 40% weaker than our basic hull armor. Power source reads as a simple fusion reactor. Efficiency rating roughly 60%. Of our emergency backup systems, weapons, Zix-9 inquired. None detected, sir. No energy weapons, no missile systems, no defensive barriers. The vessel appears to be completely unarmed. This was exactly what Zix-9 had expected. Human technology was notoriously primitive. Their ships were slow, their weapons ineffective, and their defensive systems laughably weak. This would be over in moments. Open communications channel, he commanded. The screen flickered and resolved into the image of what was clearly the human vessel's bridge. A female human sat in what appeared to be a simple chair, wearing a practical blue uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back efficiently, and her brown eyes looked directly at him with an expression of curious interest rather than fear. "This is Commander Zix-9 of the Vorthok Dominion," he announced in perfect galactic standard. "You have entered restricted space. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded for processing." The human tilted her head slightly, a gesture that Zix-9 had learned indicated confusion in their species. When she spoke, her voice was calm and surprisingly friendly. "Hello there, Commander. I'm Captain Alina Rodriguez of the freight hauler Lucky Strike. I'm sorry, but our navigation charts show this area as open space. We're just running supplies to the mining colony on Kepler 4 for 2B. Is there some kind of territorial dispute I should know about? Zix9 felt his patience decreasing by the standard measurement. These primitives always tried to negotiate when faced with superior force. This sector is now under Vorthok administration. You will shut down your engines and await boarding, or face immediate destruction. Captain Rodriguez looked genuinely concerned. Look, Commander, I really don't want any trouble. We're carrying medical supplies and food for the colonists. People are depending on us. Maybe we could work out some kind of transit permit or pay a passage fee. You have 30 seconds to comply, Zix9 stated flatly. Cutting the communication, he turned to his weapons officer. Target their propulsion systems. Minimum power setting. We need them functional for interrogation. Weapons officer Turk-12 nodded efficiently. Quantum disruptors charging. Target locked. Firing. Blue-white energy lanced across space toward the human vessel. The quantum disruptors operated by disrupting the atomic bonds in matter, causing targeted systems to simply fall apart at the molecular level. Even at minimum power, they should have disabled the primitive human engines instantly. The energy beams struck the human ship's engine section and simply disappeared. Turk-12 stared at his console in confusion. Sir, weapon fired successfully, but no impact registered. Sensors show no damage to target vessel. Sensor malfunction. Zix9 declared immediately. Fire again. Standard power. The second beam, bright enough to be visible across several light years, struck the same location. Again, it simply vanished without effect. Impossible, Vex-7 whispered from his science station. Sir, our weapons are functioning perfectly. The energy beams are reaching the target coordinates and then simply ceasing to exist. Zix9 felt something he had never experienced in his 40 years of military service. Complete bewilderment. Vorthok weapons did not simply fail. Their technology was tested, refined, and perfected over centuries. There had to be an explanation. Try. The particle cannons, he ordered. Golden beams of pure energy shot toward the human vessel. They too vanished the moment they came into contact with the ship's hull. Graviton torpedoes. Full spread. 6 massive projectiles streaked through space, each one capable of creating a localized gravity well strong enough to crush a small moon. They reached within 50 meters of the human ship and simply winked out of existence as if they had never been fired. The communications channel opened again without them requesting it. Captain Rodriguez appeared on screen, now looking genuinely worried. Commander, are you folks having technical difficulties? We're reading a lot of energy discharges from your ship, but nothing's reaching us. If your weapon systems are malfunctioning, we'd be happy to help. We've got some pretty good engineers aboard. Zix9 stared at the screen. The human captains seemed genuinely concerned about their welfare, apparently oblivious to the fact that she had just survived an attack that could have destroyed a battlecruiser. How are you deflecting our weapons? He demanded. Captain Rodriguez looked confused. Deflecting? We're not doing anything. We don't have any defensive systems. This is just a cargo hauler. Look, if you're having technical problems, maybe we should move to a safe distance while you run diagnostics. Science Officer Vex-7 was running every scan in his repertoire. Commander, I am detecting no energy shields, no defensive barriers, no deflector arrays of any kind. According to our instruments, there is nothing around that vessel that could stop a thrown rock, much less our quantum disruptors. But our weapons are not reaching them, Zix9 said slowly. No, sir, they are not. Captain Rodriguez was consulting with someone off-screen. She turned back to face them. "Commander, my chief engineer, Dr. Marcus Chen, would like to take a look at your weapon systems, if that's okay. He's really good with troubleshooting technical problems. Would it help if we came aboard?" For the first time in 8 centuries of Vorthok expansion, Commander Zix-9 found himself facing something that his superior technology could not handle. A primitive human cargo vessel was casually ignoring the most advanced weapons in the known galaxy, and they seemed to think the problem was on his end. "Sir, Communications Officer," Drill 3 said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zix-9 looked at the human ship floating peacefully in space, showing absolutely no signs of damage despite being hit with enough firepower to level a continent. The creature on the screen was still looking at him with what appeared to be genuine concern for his technical difficulties. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zix-9 of the Vorthok Dominion had absolutely no idea what to do next. 2 hours had passed since the impossible encounter began. Zix-9 stood in his private command chamber, staring out at the human vessel through the reinforced viewing portal. The ship still floated there peacefully, completely undamaged despite being subjected to weapons fire that should have reduced it to component atoms. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication from Vorthok High Command. The holographic image of Supreme Admiral Keth Prim materialized in the center of the chamber, her ancient features showing the characteristic bronze coloration of the highest military caste. "Commander Zix-9," she began without preamble, "explain why you have been exchanging weapons fire with a primitive cargo vessel for the past 2 hours without achieving resolution." Zix-9 chose his words carefully. "Supreme Admiral, we have encountered an unprecedented situation. The human vessel appears to possess defensive capabilities that our current technology cannot overcome." Keth Prim's compound eyes focused sharply on him. "Impossible. Human technology is centuries behind our own. Their ships are constructed from primitive materials using obsolete engineering principles. Yes, Supreme Admiral, that is what makes this situation so... puzzling." The communication alert sounded again. "Sir," came the voice of Communications Officer Drill 3, "the human captain is requesting to speak with you again." "Put her through," Zix-9 said, gesturing for the connection to include Supreme Admiral Keth Prim in the conference. Captain Rodriguez appeared on the display, still sitting at her simple bridge station. She looked exactly as she had hours ago, calm and slightly concerned. "Commander Zix-9, I hope you don't mind me calling again. We've been monitoring your ship's energy output, and our sensors are showing some concerning fluctuations in your power systems. Our engineer thinks you might be overloading your weapons, trying to fix whatever's wrong with them." Supreme Admiral Keth Prim leaned forward, studying the human captain with intense interest. "I am Supreme Admiral Keth Prim of the Vorthok High Command. Human, you will explain how your primitive vessel is deflecting our weapons." Captain Rodriguez blinked in surprise. "Supreme Admiral, well, it's an honor to meet you, ma'am, but I have to tell you the same thing I told the commander. We're not deflecting anything. We don't have any weapons or defensive systems. This is just a cargo hauler. If your weapons aren't firing, there must be something wrong with your targeting systems or power coupling." She paused, then continued with obvious sincerity. "Look, I know our species haven't had much contact yet, but we're not enemies. If you're having technical difficulties, we really would like to help. Dr. Chen has fixed problems with dozens of different types of technology. Maybe a fresh perspective would help." Keth Prim's expression was unreadable. "You are claiming that your vessel has no defensive capabilities whatsoever. That's right. We've got basic life support, a fusion reactor, and some pretty standard engines. Nothing fancy. The most dangerous thing aboard is probably the coffee machine in the galley. Zixnine watched his Supreme Admiral process this information. In 800 years of expansion, the Vorthok had never encountered a species that survived there. Initial contact through anything other than superior defensive technology or overwhelming numbers. Commander Keth Prime said quietly, "I want that human vessel brought aboard immediately. We need to understand how their technology works." Supreme Admiral Zixnine replied carefully, "Our tractor beams are as ineffective as our weapons. We cannot move their ship." The silence that followed was perhaps the longest in Vorthok military history. Captain Rodriguez cleared her throat diplomatically. "If you'd like us to dock with your ship, we'd be happy to do that. The Lucky Strike has standard universal docking adapters. Would that work?" And so it was that the most advanced military vessel in the Vorthok fleet found itself playing host to a human cargo hauler whose technology shouldn't have worked, whose defenses shouldn't have existed, and whose crew seemed genuinely puzzled by the entire situation. As the human ship maneuvered toward their docking bay with what appeared to be simple thruster control, Zixnine realized that everything he thought he understood about technology, warfare, and the galaxy itself was about to change forever. Asterisk, the truth behind human engineering. Marcus Chen stepped through the airlock onto the Vorthok dreadnought, carrying what appeared to be a simple toolbox and wearing a friendly smile. Behind him came Captain Rodriguez and engineer Lisa Park, both looking around with obvious curiosity at the sleek, precisely engineered corridors of the alien vessel. Commander Zixnine watched them with 3 of his 6 eyes, while the others monitored the security feeds showing their movements. The humans appeared completely relaxed, showing no signs of fear or hostile intent. Dr. Chen was a middle-aged man with graying hair and clothes that looked like they had seen considerable practical use. He moved with the confident gait of someone who had spent years solving problems with his hands. "Fascinating architecture," Dr. Chen commented as they walked through the corridors toward the weapons control center. "Very efficient design. I can see why your energy distribution systems work so well. Though I'm curious about the redundancy protocols. Do you have backup systems for the backup systems?" Science Officer Vec 7, who was accompanying them, looked confused by the question. "Our systems are designed for perfect efficiency. Redundancy would be wasteful. Each component performs its function at optimal capacity." Dr. Chun nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting approach. We tend to go the other way, assume everything will break eventually, and plan accordingly." They reached a weapons control center, where Weapons Officer Tug 12 stood ready to demonstrate the systems that had mysteriously failed against the human ship. The chamber was a marvel of Vorthok engineering, with crystalline controlled matrices and energy conduits that pulsed with barely contained power. "These are our quantum disruptor arrays," Turk 12 explained with obvious pride. "They operate by disrupting atomic cohesion at the quantum level. The energy output is precisely calibrated to achieve maximum effect with minimal waste." Dr. Chen examined the systems with professional interest, occasionally pulling a simple multimeter from his toolbox to take readings. "Beautiful work. The energy focus is incredibly precise. But tell me, what happens if one of these quantum matrices gets knocked out of alignment?" "That is impossible," Turk 12 replied. "The systems are designed to maintain perfect calibration, but hypothetically, the entire array would shut down rather than operate at suboptimal efficiency." Dr. Chen made a small noise that might have been approval or concern. I see, and you fired these at our ship multiple times. The energy simply disappeared upon contact with your hull. Huh. Dr. Chen walked over to examine the targeting systems. Mind if I take a look at your sensor readings from when you fired? Turk activated the holographic display, showing the energy signatures from their earlier attacks. Dr. Chen studied the data for several minutes, occasionally making small sounds of understanding. I think I see the problem, he said finally. Every Vorthok in the room turned their attention to him. Your weapons are too good, Dr. Chen explained. They're so precisely calibrated that they don't know how to handle our ship. Commander Zix9 stepped forward. Explain. Dr. Chen pulled a small tablet from his toolbox and called up what appeared to be schematic diagrams of the human ship. See, the Lucky Strike wasn't built according to any single design. The whole plating is a mix of 6 different alloys from 4 different manufacturers. The power conduits run through non-standard channels because we had to route around a waste recycling system that was bigger than expected. The structural supports are reinforced in some places and jury-rigged in others. He gestured to the Vorthok systems around them. Your quantum disruptors are programmed to disrupt specific atomic structures. But our ship doesn't have consistent atomic structures. Every section is different. Your targeting systems are trying to calculate the perfect disruption frequency for the entire ship, but there isn't one. Vex 7 looked skeptical. That ship make your vessel extremely vulnerable. Inconsistent materials would create weak points throughout the structure. You'd think so, Dr. Chen agreed. But that's where human engineering gets weird. We don't build things to be perfect. We build them to work, despite being imperfect. He activated another schematic. See this section here? The hull is weaker than your standards, but it's backed up by 3 different support systems that weren't in the original design. If one fails, the other to compensate. If all 3 fail, there's an emergency patch system that can seal breaches with expanding foam. Captain Rodriguez spoke up. Dr. Chen once fixed our hyperdrive with duct tape and a piece of gum. It worked for 6 months, Dr. Chen said proudly. The replacement part cost 3 times as much and failed after 4 months. Supreme Admiral Keth Prime, who had been observing through the communication system, materialized as a hologram in the center of the room. Dr. Chen, you are claiming that your technology succeeds through imperfection. Not imperfection, exactly. Adaptability. We assume things will go wrong, so we build systems that can handle unexpected problems. Your quantum disruptors are incredibly sophisticated, but they're designed to work against predictable targets. Our ship isn't predictable. Dr. Chen walked over to one of the quantum matrix assemblies. Mind if I try something? I promise I won't break anything important. Commander Zix9 nodded, curious despite himself. Dr. Chen pulled out what appeared to be a simple wrench and made a tiny adjustment to one of the alignment crystals. Try firing now. Low power, just a test shot. Turk 12 looked uncertain but followed orders. The quantum disruptor fired, and this time, the energy beam struck the human ship and dissipated harmlessly against the hull instead of disappearing entirely. There we go, Dr. Chen said with satisfaction. I introduced a tiny calibration error into your targeting system. Now it's trying to disrupt atomic structures that are close to what it detects, but not exactly right. Since our hull is already inconsistent, the beam just spreads out and loses cohesion instead of being perfectly focused. The silence in the weapons control center was profound. You fixed our weapons by making them work incorrectly. Vex 7 asked in disbelief. I made them work correctly for an incorrect target, Dr. Chen corrected. Sometimes the best solution isn't the perfect solution. Sometimes it's the solution that works with what you actually have instead of what you wish you had. Engineer Lisa. Park stepped forward. The same principle applies to our engines. We can't afford the perfect fuel mixture your ships probably use, so our fusion reactors are designed to burn whatever we can get. They're less efficient, but they're more reliable. And our navigation systems, Captain Rodriguez added, we use multiple independent systems that cross-check each other. None of them are as accurate as yours, but if one fails, the others keep working. Supreme Admiral Keth Prime studied the humans with an expression that was difficult to read. Your entire technological philosophy is based on expecting failure. Expecting reality, Dr. Chen corrected gently. Perfect conditions don't exist outside of laboratories. Everything we build has to work in the real world, with real problems, handled by real people who sometimes make mistakes. He gestured around the pristine Vorthok control room. Your technology is incredible, but it requires everything to work exactly as designed. What happens when it doesn't? Commander Zix9 found himself thinking about the countless times Vorthok systems had shut down completely rather than operate at reduced efficiency. How many battles might have been won if their weapons could function even when damaged? How many ships might have survived if their systems could adapt to unexpected conditions? We have much to learn from each other, he said finally. Dr. Chen smiled. That's what makes first contact so exciting. You've got the most sophisticated technology I've ever seen. And we've got 800 years of making things work with duct tape and determination. Imagine what we could build together. Captain Rodriguez looked around the weapons control center with newfound appreciation. So, about that territorial dispute. Instead of fighting over this sector, what if we set up a joint research station? Your precision engineering plus our adaptive solutions could lead to some amazing discoveries. Supreme Admiral Kethprim considered this for a long moment. The High Command will need to review this proposal, but I believe there is wisdom in exploring cooperation rather than conquest. As the humans prepared to return to their ship, Dr. Chen paused at the airlock. Commander, one more thing. Your ship's environmental systems are running at exactly optimal efficiency, right? Of course. You might want to consider running them at 95% efficiency with the extra capacity held in reserve. Perfect efficiency is great until something unexpected happens. Zix9 watched the human cargo vessel detach from his dreadnought and resume its course toward the mining colony. For 800 years, the Vorthok had believed that technological perfection was the ultimate goal. Today, they had learned that sometimes the most advanced solution was to embrace imperfection. As the Lucky Strike disappeared into hyperspace, its hull patches and jury-rigged systems carrying it safely to its destination. Commander Zix9 began to understand that the galaxy was far more complex and interesting than the Vorthok Empire had ever imagined. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation had begun, and it all started with a cargo hauler held together with duct tape and human ingenuity. Asterisk.